Hey guys, welcome back. So now getting back into Absolute Carnage, which is exactly as the name entails and nothing short of it, especially with the way that we come to find out that Carnage has cornered the odds towards Eddie, leaving him to make a decision to where there is no right answer. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so just picking up from where we had left off, where Carnage had defeated the Hulk, and with doing so taking the Venom symbiote from him, and really doing so fairly quickly by outsmarting him and not allowing him to just beat the mess out of Carnage and waste a lot of his time, because this is the man on a mission. And as far as Eddie Brock, who at this point has no symbiote because Carnage has it, Eddie had then broken into the Maker's machine, which was built to extract codices, and Eddie bonded with them in order to have something to fight Carnage. And really, like in this final hour of Absolute Carnage, it really takes everything back down to these two, because what we come to find out is that even still at this point, much of the determining factor of what's needed to unlock Knull, that answer sits between Eddie and Cletus Cassidy, and it's mainly because of what happened in the last issue, as far as in a literal sense, which we'll get much deeper into in just a little bit. But this whole concept is also hinted towards when we get a flashback of Cletus Cassidy and Eddie Brock back when they first met on Rikers Island many years ago, to where at the time Cassidy, who had very much made a reputation for himself, but even with doing so, with meeting Eddie, he was also like, okay, well, I've heard of this Venom guy. And it's very early on that Cletus makes the case to Eddie that the two of them are very much alike, which for obvious reasons, which we know Eddie would very much beg to differ. But more or less with us getting this flashback, it's kind of like that callback or that reminder of one of those things that Cletus Cassidy used to kind of tease Eddie with, which once again comes back in a very huge way. And this is really one of those things, like, if Eddie's honest with himself, like, for the most part, he's over the whole idea of seeing, like, if he can do more help than harm with the Venom symbiote. Like, he's made a lot of progress in that area, but more of his struggle recently, it more so pertains to things like telling the truth to Dylan and letting Dylan know that he's actually his father and not just his brother. But even once again, on top of that, I'll say again that there's an argument to be made that he's still not completely over the tragic death of Dylan's mother. And really, these are just a couple examples out of the many that Eddie's dealing with. And of course, when Carnage puts in his 2 cents, he is not helping at all. And plus, God forbid that there's any truth to Carnage trying to make this point. But on top of this, even at this point, with all the codices that Carnage has collected, his connection to Knull has been amplified like crazy. And it's to the point to where you can hear him breathing, Knull is almost awake, and the inevitable is soon to be reality. But also, in addition to this connection to Knull, Carnage can see through each and every one of his symbiotes that are a part of the Horde, and he more or less describes this view to Eddie like the heroes just being drowned in a pool of red. Because at this point, with like a half a dozen versus the Horde, like, the odds ain't looking too good. But Cassidy's main reason for showing this to Eddie is just like, he just wants him to give up. And he more or less just tells him like, look, you see how bad it is? Just give me your codex, this could be done with. Like, really just save yourself the trouble. And really, just for the most part, Cletus is just trying to sell him the whole idea that at this point, it doesn't really matter what Eddie does, Knull is inevitable, and the coming together of these codices, it's gonna happen one way or another. But at this point, as far as right now, Eddie's main focus is, one, getting the Venom symbiote back from Carnage, because at this point in time, as far as he knows, Dylan is still safe with Spider-Man, and that assurance is also refortified when a few friends come in to help, and even the odds just a little bit with the rest of the heroes who are fighting in this sea of red this whole time. And this is where we get Cloak and Dagger, who bring in Scream, Iron Fist, Captain Marvel, Deathlock, Morbius, pretty much everybody from the tie-ins, and they all jump in this moment to where, like, if it was a movie or a show, like, this is where the theme songs start playing and the music gets you all pumped up, like, yeah, we got hope, we're gonna make it. Right, like, we gonna see. But also, if you guys remember, back when Eddie left Normie and Dylan with Peter so that Eddie could go out there and face Carnage, like, even over on Peter's behalf, like, this wasn't no small task, because on Peter's end, fighting off Norman Osborn, while the rest of this madness was going on, it had taken everything out of him, like fighting him off in that closed area, like, to the point of exhaustion. But even with this and both Peter and Norman going down for the count, like, just being completely exhausted, like, even with doing so, the boys were far from safe. And it's essentially because just seconds later, the symbiote which was attached to Norman, it leaves his body and then it comes after Normie and Dylan. And so now, if you guys remember back when we talked about the newfound abilities of Dylan, of which from what we know there are about like 3, at least from what we discovered so far. And I got a link down below if you need a refresher. But from that initial discovery up to this point, he's gotten a little bit of practice. And with most of that practice being by force of circumstance, it's really just pushed Dylan to the place to where he is done. playing games with symbiotes. Like, he's tired of having his back against the wall, and it's almost as if like this power which he described as Sleeper, it felt like a part of him, what he was supposed to be and what he needed to do. Like back when he used this power to take over Sleeper, like I would even go as far to say that this part of him that feels like it should be superior, or it should be the master to the symbiote, if you will, it's probably the same feeling or same instinct that's continually urging him to fight back and pushing him to the point to where, okay, he's tired of running, because there's a part of him in his DNA that just knows that he's not a prey, he's not to be preyed upon. But yet and still, with him being pretty novice to this, it drains him completely, and with doing so just pretty much leaving him defenseless immediately after. But even with this happening and going back to Eddie and Cletus Cassidy, like Carnage has been watching this even still the whole time, because he can see through the eyes of every member of the Horde, which also includes the symbiote of Norman Osborn. And when he sees this, immediately Cletus and Eddie come crashing through the roof, which I thought was pretty cool, with us just seeing like what Carnage has seen and not even jumping back to him, but like just him showing up. And so essentially with us jumping back to Carnage is like, yo, he's here, which is pretty crazy. But also at this point, with Dylan defenseless and Carnage giving Eddie this ultimatum where it's like Eddie has to choose, and really it's either way that you look at it, Carnage wins, because on one hand you have option A, and with option A, Carnage kills Dylan, takes his codex, and Carnage wins. But on the other hand, with option B, Eddie kills Carnage, to which where to do so he'll have to use the Codices symbiote, and with doing so he'll be essentially giving away his codex. So it's like either way Carnage wins, and it places Eddie in this tough position whether to lose his son or lose the world. And I mean, it's really not that tough of a decision to lose the world or lose your son, because you know, for God so loved the world that he gave, you know, Eddie's like, nah, bump that. Nah, bump that. Eddie's like, bump the world, bump the whole world. But with doing this, the symbiote then leaves the body of Cletus Cassidy, which has been a corpse since Carnage Born. But with leaving Cassidy, it then latches onto Eddie, and once connected to Eddie, the Venom symbiote returns to Eddie, but also with a live and direct connection to Knull, who has just awoken. And really for Eddie, it was one of those situations like, what? He didn't really have a choice. Like, what would you expect him to choose? Especially if either option led to this catastrophe. So either way, no matter how you look at it, either decision would have gotten us here, with Knull awakening and making his way for Earth. And even when this takes place, the Venom symbiote makes it clear that it can hear Knull and Knull can hear the both of them, even all the way out to Clintar. But even still with this occurring, like one of the things that very much intrigues me is like the whole Venom absorbing Carnage thing. Is like that just happened, because we know of late that this is one of those things that just can't be good, especially when you take your instances of like your perfect symbiosis where you have the host who's able to transfer into the symbiote, or more specifically transfer their consciousness into the symbiote even after the original host body is destroyed. And it's like we've seen this with Killmonger recently. There's more of this going on in King Thor, but I'm pretty sure I can safely say that absorbing Carnage is not a good thing, no matter which way you look at it. But even with this happening, most importantly before we move forward, I do want to state that this once again reinforces the whole argument which Cletus Cassidy was making, saying that him and Eddie Brock were pretty much the same. And it almost makes it seem as if this was the main reason why Cletus Cassidy was saving Eddie Brock for last, mainly just so he could place him in this impossible scenario for his own amusement and bring back that old point that he had been making to his good old buddy from Rikers Island. And so now at this point, after all this has taken place, and as far as secrets go between Eddie and Dylan, and on Eddie's part, it's like, okay, he was just yelling, stay away from my son. So now it's like at this point, okay, cat's out the bag. But even with this, on the flip side, as far as what Eddie knows about Dylan, now that he's connected directly to Knull, who is making haste to make his way back here, this also opens up the possibility for Eddie to have a better understanding of Knull's power, which will in return help him understand what exactly Dylan is capable of, which could be an absolute game changer towards the conclusion. But either way, Knull is free and he's making his way to Earth full speed. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Like, I gotta admit, like I can't help but think, like, I'm still hoping that the Silver Surfer just pops up, even just for a little bit, and like your present day Silver Surfer, which probably won't happen because it'll be kind of like he's still in the spotlight. But I'll definitely admit that I would not be mad at that, not one bit. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and also like how would you like for this to wrap up from here, because it does really feel like Eddie is the answer. But as you guys know, I love to hear your theories and get an idea of where you guys think it should go. So let me know down in the comments and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.